Can you describe to listeners the basic process of removing THC from extracts? And maybe this can lead into talking about extract refinement broadly. But what does it take to do that, and what concerns do you have about it, and what sort of opportunities do you see related there? Because especially with the CBD market booming, it seems like that's going to the demand for THC-free products is going to continue for some time.
Certainly. There are 3 primary methods that are being employed by manufacturers for the remediation of THC. The first and foremost is column chromatography and flash chromatography to separate out THC from the other cannabinoids through retention time. Another method that I'm interacting with very intimately right now is rotary partition chromatography that is very similar to column chromatography but utilizes 2 immiscible liquids as a mobile and stationary phase as opposed to a solid stationary phase, so we can get some unique separation options through running bidirectionally.
Interesting.
And that gives us a little bit greater control of what constituents we'd like to incorporate, and gives us also more control of how many parts of the pie we take apart versus which ones we want to keep together. So there is some superior applications to rotary partition chromatography for the isolation and removal of THC from a broader matrix of cannabinoids. And then finally, a couple techniques that are being utilized are dilution, taking an enriched CBD product and adding CBD distillate to that or CBD isolate to that product in order to, through mass, dilute out the THC level to a point that can be below LOQ while retaining some of the minor cannabinoids such as cannabigerol and cannabichromine to provide a certificate of analysis that would demonstrate a profile of cannabinoids beyond isolate.
Right, you're pushing that THC level below what an analytical lab can confidently report. And so there's still THC there, but by concentration, it's just driven down so low that you can get a certificate of analysis that makes it seem like there's no THC in it. And that's actually a concept that I'm going to elaborate on in another recording, but just talking about lab testing, the concept of an LOQ, and that all analytical labs basically have this floor of a concentration that anything above that they can confidently report, but anything below they can't, not with scientific integrity. And labs don't ever report that something is not present. They just say it's either not detected or it's below LOQ. So that's really important for people to understand, that just because a lab test says that something's below LOQ, it does not mean that something, whatever that is that was tested, is not present in that product in some ultra trace concentration. Sorry, continue. That's an important caveat.
Yeah. And one of the last techniques that I find very interesting, also slightly concerning, are the methods of what we consider THC is the chemical delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol.
Right.
And that is what is the primary marker for potency. And some manufacturers are generating various isomers or oxidized products that will reduce the total concentration in a product of its delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol while converting that to other forms that may still be bioactive, have a different therapeutic index, but will not be delta-9 THC.
Right. So technically, they will satisfy basic legal requirements to not have THC in them. However, they just have different forms of THC in them. that are not considered by current regulations.
So one great example is the induction of oxidation to tetrahydrocannabinol to generate cannabinol, CBN. CBN is a very, very sedative and potent cannabinoid that will result in a very different pharmacological experience compared to a THC-free product without CBN.
Wow.
So even though both might be on the market as THC-free,
Right.
one derived through induction of CBN will be marketably pharmacologically different than one that has had the THC removed via chromatography techniques.
Man, that is a really good point to make to our listeners, that even these THC-free products, man, they're not the same across the board. Yeah, and that's concerning. I've heard reports from my home state of Mississippi that like students in high school and stuff are actually getting savvy to this issue and finding CBD products on the market that have like Delta 8 THC or CBN, and they've figured out that they can still get a high from these products even though they technically do not have Delta 9 THC in them. And that's been a little concerning, and something I've mentioned before on a different podcast is that I view that as something that sooner or later will get the attention of the FDA as a public health and safety issue. That THC is, right now so narrowly defined that there's still room to make these products that are reaching kids that can have some adverse effects and intoxicating effects and that sort of thing.